Portions of this show are recorded. Strap in and be prepared.
You just heard Baby J about 3 minutes give his entire A to Z on what was going on. I didn't interrupt you.
I don't even like I got to everything, honestly.
No, you didn't get to everything.
Interesting guests.
Kelly Graves, Mike Parker, Josh Pate, Melissa Lombardi, Yogi Roth, who said that Justin and I are smart.
Sharp opinions.
I think Dan Lanning sitting in his office going, you know what, fine, give us the toughest road to win the national championship. That's what it should be.
I think that this team is going to go as far as Malik Murphy takes them. There's a lot to like about this offense if he's who we think he could be.
And some smiles.
Is this thing on?
Is this thing working? No, that's why you got to do this. You got to go.
Hello?
Hello? Testing, testing,
it's like the little
testing.
girl in Nemo where she's tapping on the glass.
Fishy! Fishy, wake up, Fishy!
It's Danny Havel.
We have to be more specific. We have a lot of pickle things going on, apparently.
Justin Grossweiner.
I've been wrong before, but that's what I think.
Danny and Justin starts now on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. Sitting in for Danny today, it's Goose, Steve Mims.
Welcome into the Danny and Justin show. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny, and happy to be here on a Tuesday afternoon, joined by my partner Justin Grossweiner, who might be the most versatile person in local radio. You never know who's hosting the show with you from day to day, but every day you're consistent and steady, and somebody over here might not even know where the microphone is, but you're always able to set things up well. So thanks for having me back in. Danny's on an off day, and happy to step in.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and thank you for the kind words. I feel like I'm pretty prepared usually. I usually know my dates beforehand of who's to be here, who's not, but I also like to think I can just talk about sports with pretty much anybody. Yeah. So, that's kind of a thing. But the run continues. The run at the Sphere has an extra day.
Yes, we are.
They've added an extra day of the next week.
You're kind of like a steady MLB catcher. Doesn't matter who's on the mound each day. You can be the one. You're not the... I think it was Greg Maddux had like his own personal catcher. Couldn't have Jorge Lopez or Jose Lopez.
John Lester with David Ross.
Yes, there you go. You're not David Ross, or you're not. You can go from pitcher to pitcher. So I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And we may have a guest today. We were there's some talk that we could get hear from somebody on the Indiana side of things. We'll wait to hear. We may potentially hear that. But for now, happy to fill in today. It's beautiful weather out there. It might be the last beautiful weather day. Actually, my wife and my son and I are going to go play 9 holes at Oakway when I'm off of my real job today, closer to 5. And I think we can get in 9 before sundown, and it's a beautiful day, so it's going to be nice.
Yeah, no, it is very beautiful today, and it started to really feel like fall. And just for context, and I think everybody has heard this if they've listened to the show, I'm from Alaska, so I grew up and I was used to it being completely snowed out by October 31st every single year. Never had a October 31st without snow. So it's nice to have seasons, I have to say, because it's either winter or summer in Alaska, and there's spring is about a 2-week period where it's just really muddy out, and then fall is like literally like a week where it's fall, and then all of a sudden there's snow. So I like the seasons. It's nice. It feels like fall.
Yeah, well, I was watching some college football on Saturday, and Wyoming had snow.
Really?
My old friend Ryan Thorburn, who worked with me at the Register Guard and now works for Wyoming, was tweeting pictures. They hosted UNLV, and there was snow in Laramie.
That's amazing. Yeah. No, it's early.
It is early.
It snowed in July and one time in Alaska. Yeah, that's pretty early.
But it seems like if you're going to schedule it, would be a great idea to schedule it for the UNLV game, who never sees snow. Yeah. But UNLV went in there and kicked them around and went to 5-0. So it didn't work out well. They should have been able to take more advantage of that. But that one did not happen there. And I did see this Saturday is supposed to be some pretty heavy rains, it looks like, for the Oregon-Indiana game.
Really? I thought it never rained there at Austin Stadium.
The announcer may tell you that, but I have been to a few games. I've been to a lot of games in my life. It has rained occasionally. It does not rain that often, but it looks like Saturday might put Don Essig's claim to the test. So it might be the possibility that it's going to rain on Saturday. Speaking of which, we are really, really happy to be joined by Don Fischer. Don Fischer is the announcer for Indiana football. He has been since 1973, which predates Justin's life. Does not predate me. I was 2 years old when Don Fischer first took the microphone for Indiana football. And we are in the glory days of Indiana football and really, really happy and honored that Don joins us here as we can chat about the game Saturday with Oregon and Indiana. Don, I know you're on tight schedule this week. Really appreciate you coming on and joining us. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you betcha. We were just talking about there might be a little rain out here. That's probably not going to bother Indiana, right? They're ready to come out and take on any temperatures that come through.
Yeah, I don't think the rain or that kind of thing is going to be it may be a factor in the ball game, but it's not going to hinder Indiana from coming.
Yep, absolutely. What's it been like with Curt Cignetti? This is the second year there. You've been through a few coaches in your 52 years on the job. What has been like with Curt Cignetti and getting to know him and kind of just the confidence, the aura that he's brought to Indiana football?
Well, he's changed everything here. Indiana's been known for a long time as one of the losingest programs in Division I football throughout the years. It's a program that has had some success over those years as well. Since I've been here back in the 80s and the early 90s under Bill Mallory, they had some pretty good football teams, and every once in a while, prior to that and after that, they've had a good ball club, but it just hasn't been very consistent. And all of a sudden, we get a guy named Curt Cignetti who comes here last year and treats Indiana fans to the winningest season that they've ever had, an 11-2 year, got to the college football playoff. Everything changed last year, and it was dramatic. Nobody has ever seen what we've seen before, anything like this, for a guy to come in here to a program that had been basically down and out for a long time, and changed it. And the fan base has all of a sudden woke up, has awakened, I should say. And without question, it's been a dramatic turnaround, and this program is electrified right now.
And we saw last year, Don, and everybody thought, oh, yeah, maybe that was a one-year deal. But then to come back this year, they're undefeated. They've got a win over what was a top 10 team at the time in Illinois. Fernando Mendoza's looked really good. For him to not only kind of come in and make things change right away, but to kind of validate it this year, does it feel like that's sort of what's happening now, is that, hey, this isn't a 1 year or a fluke. This is now proving that what Curt Cignetti's doing can work in the long run?
There's no question that it can. The guy's never had a losing season, and he's coached at virtually every level there is in college football. And every place he's been a winner. And without question, to do what he did last year at Indiana, I think validates that as well. So all I can tell you at this point is Indiana football is different now. It's dramatically better. What he did in the portal the first year and now here in the second season at this point is pretty remarkable. And when you consider the lack of winning on a consistent basis throughout the years, that's now kind of become an expectation. At least it has through the first year and a half of Curt Cignetti's reign as the head coach. So, yeah. You know, it may not last forever, but all I can tell you at this juncture is this guy's the real deal, and his program is one that I think Indiana fans can be really proud of.
Don, this is Justin. Thanks again for being here with us. I'm just curious to the identity of this offense and how it's changed from last year to this year with Fernando Mendoza. Curtis Rourke obviously had a lot of success last year. How has it been different, and the identity of the offense been different with Fernando this year?
Well, it really hasn't been a great deal different. I guess if you wanted to talk about the differences that Fernando has brought to the table, it would be the fact that he's a better athlete, or at least he is a better athlete this year than what Fernando was last year. As many people do or may not know, Rourke last year had a torn ACL that he played with the entire season, which was a remarkable scenario when nobody knew about it other than the training staff probably at Indiana. But Rourke was limping around a lot in the preseason, and then all of a sudden that limp went away, and he was playing pretty well. But his mobility was always a question mark, and so he wasn't a real mobile guy. But the offensive line did a nice job of protecting him throughout much of the season. And with Fernando, that's a different story. He's a big 6'5" kid, 225, 230 pounds. He can run. He can fly when he gets out in the open. So he has a lot more mobility. But the one problem that he had coming to Indiana as a first-year quarterback was that the year before at California, he was sacked 47 times.
Yeah.
He had some happy feet out there when he first got into spring ball here. And all of a sudden he found out that we had an offensive line that could protect him, and that's what they did. And they've done so throughout this season up to this point. Just a couple of sacks so far at this point in the season. And so he's gotten much more stable. He looks like he's more confident than he's ever been. I don't think there's any doubt that he has NFL talent as far as his arm, his accuracy, and those kinds of things are concerned. He's just a junior. He's got another year of eligibility if he wants to stay at Indiana after this season. But right now, everybody's concerned about what they're concerned about is making a statement against a really good team. And they've done that against Illinois that was ranked in the top 10 when they beat them. But at the same time, they are not an Oregon ball club that we're going to face in this ball game. So I think it's going to be really fun to see what Indiana does in this contest. I think it's going to be tough, especially from the standpoint of playing at Autzen Stadium. And I've been there one other time. That was back in 2004. And Jerry DiNardo, who was the coach at that time and got fired after that season, Jerry DiNardo's team won because Oregon turned the ball over 7 times. I doubt we're going to see that on Saturday.
Don, I was just going to ask you about that. I was at the Register Guard covering that game, and I remember that one very well. 30-24, Indiana wins. Indiana takes a 23. This is the season opener. Oregon's got high hopes. Suddenly, the season is 23-0 at the half. Oregon's had, I think, 5 turnovers in the first half. They turn over 7 total. Green Ellis has a touchdown run. Courtney Roby with the touchdown, and then they get the kickoff return from Lance Bennett later on. But that was really a magical moment. I remember it as just Oregon fans. It's opening weekend. We're so fired up, and it just deflated so quickly. And I know things didn't go great that year for DiNardo, but that was a heck of a game, and I'm sure a memory for you.
Well, it was a memory because nobody expected Indiana to win that ball game. I mean, after the first 2 years of Jerry DiNardo's reign of 3 seasons, and he had a total of 8 wins in those 3 seasons, to beat a team like Oregon at that point was something nobody expected. And it turned out that it was probably a fluke in that sense because 7 turnovers by the other team is usually going to give you a pretty good opportunity to take advantage of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you talk about what Cignetti's done, and you talk about the win over Illinois. That was obviously at home. Last year, the one loss was at Ohio State. It feels like kind of the thing that's left for Cignetti to check off is a big road win. That kind of sets this up to potentially be kind of the next thing on the bucket list for Curt Cignetti is to go on the road and get a win like this that we haven't seen from Indiana in a long time.
Well, there's no question. I mean, last year Indiana was beat twice. They got beat by Ohio State during the regular season, and then Notre Dame beat them in the playoff. But the fact of the matter is Indiana hasn't been able to beat one of these powerhouse football programs. And Oregon, and Ohio State, they did beat Michigan last year and beat them back in 2020 as well. So they beat Michigan a couple of times. But from a Big Ten perspective, to beat an Ohio State or an Oregon would be something special. Indiana, I don't think, in my memory banks now, I think the last time they beat Ohio State was 1988. They beat them in 87 as well. They beat them twice, and they beat them at Ohio State the first time under Bill Mowry back in 1987. Indiana had never won in Ohio Stadium prior to that, and obviously they were able to get it done that year. But it hasn't happened since, and to beat a team like Oregon in this matchup, a team that's got a pedigree that Indiana hasn't been able to knock off, that would be huge for this program, no question about it.
And for Curt Cignetti, we hear so much about this offense and how well run it is. What do you see, and what makes him such a good play caller in these games?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that he was a quarterback in college at West Virginia. And he was just an average guy. He was one of those people, but his ability to help train his coaches, the guys that have been his offensive coordinators, to get them to understand how he wants it done, and then to keep those guys, because he's had Brian Haynes as his defensive coordinator, Mike Shanahan's his offensive coordinator. I think they have 7 and 9 years in regard to being with Cignetti. in the program. And obviously Kurt puts a lot of on the table for those guys. And Cignetti is one of those people that, from an offensive standpoint, and that's where his primary coaching abilities have come from, because he was a quarterback's coach most of the years he was an assistant. That guy really knows what he's talking about. And Shanahan has done a tremendous job of taking the role of offensive coordinator and invoking some of the things that he thinks are really important and key. And Cignetti's allowed him to do that. But I can tell you this much, that Curt Cignetti still has his hand on the controls, so to speak, as they set up a game plan. And then Mike Shanahan carries it out. So it's Cignetti's just interesting because he watches film. I don't know that anybody in the country, coaching-wise, watches more film than this guy. He absolutely loves doing it, number one. It's his hobby, basically. And if he's not coaching his team, if he's not doing something from a media standpoint or those kinds of things, you could almost always find him in his office looking at film, whether it's recruits from the transfer portal, whether it's high school coaches and high school players that he's looking at. He is always watching film and trying to dissect what he sees and infiltrate that into the program. So he's just a remarkable guy in that regard. He's very quirky in some ways, and he obviously exudes a lot of confidence, but I don't think he's just a cocky guy. He's one of those people that has proven that he can back up his words, and obviously I think he just has a tremendous amount of confidence in his own abilities.
We'll wrap it up here. Don Fischer joining us. He is the voice of Indiana football, heading to Autzen Stadium for the second time, seeing if he can see an Indiana team pull off a second upset of Oregon there. Don, before we let you go, defensively, we've talked about Mendoza and the offense. Defensively, this team's given up less than 10 a game. 2 Big Ten games. They gave up 10 to Illinois, which was ranked 17th, 15 to Iowa. I know everybody talks about Cignetti and the numbers they can put up, the 63 against Indiana, the 63 against Illinois, the 73 against Indiana State. But defensively, this seems like a group that might even be better than last year's.
I think they, in some ways, they are. There's still a question mark a little bit on some of the things that they've done this year, especially at the safety spots. I think one of the real keys, Lewis Moore, who was finally given eligibility for the full season. He was dealing with the NCAA and the court system going into the season. They gave him 2 games initially. They gave him 2 more ball games, and then they came up with a ruling 2 weeks ago that he would be eligible for the rest of the year. That guy suddenly played with like nothing was wrong, like all the troubles in the world were off his shoulders in this last ball game against Iowa. Played really good ball game, had an interception and some major tackles in that contest against a really tough Iowa football team. They gave Indiana a lot of problems in that ball game, and I don't think the issues in that regard were necessarily all Iowa, but I think there was no question that Iowa was a very physical, strong, tough football team that they had to deal with, and they had to bounce back a couple of times in that ball game to end up winning it late in the contest, and they were able to do that. And I think that kind of game, and they really hadn't had a game like that in the last 2 seasons. Last year, when they did get beat by Ohio State and Notre Dame, they made some mistakes that were just critical in critical situations in those 2 ball games that cost them. And I think maybe they fixed some of that, but at the same time, they needed a game that was going to cause them to have some problems and have to find a way to be resilient at the end of the ball game. And they were able to do that a little over a week ago. And I think that really helped this team from a mental standpoint as much as anything. Whether it helps them against this really talented Oregon team or not, we'll find out. But I think Indiana will compete. There's no doubt about that.
Don Fischer, he has been the voice of Indiana football since 1973. Really good information there, Don. I know you got a lot to do and got a couple things to head out to, but we really appreciate you carving a few minutes into your day and coming on with us. We welcome you to Eugene this week. I hope you have a wonderful visit. We'll see if it'll be as pleasant as that 2004 visit for you. And either way, I hope you have a great trip down here and enjoyed the time in Eugene. Thank you, though, very much for coming on. Maybe we chat in a couple weeks before the Big Ten title game if there's a rematch.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys.
You bet. Don Fischer, thanks so much for joining us. He is Don Fischer, the voice of Indiana football since 1973. All right, this is Steve Mims. I'm filling in for Danny. You are listening to the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports Eugene. Welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show on KORE, Fox Sports Eugene, 1050 AM, 102.9 FM, and Fox Sports Newport, KNCU, 92.7. Justin, good job getting Don Fischer on the show. That was really cool. First off,
very cool.
A guy who's been doing that job for 52 years. And Indiana football hasn't been great for 52 years. There have been some lean years in that one. And it's actually really cool that a guy who does it that long is there for the glory years of Indiana football, too.
No, totally deserved, right?
Yeah.
And been there for a lot of good basketball moments, obviously.
Yeah.
But growing up as a Big Ten fan and rooting for Wisconsin as a child, you kind of always knew when Indiana was on your schedule, wasn't such a bad week. You had the Ohio States and Michigan States and Michigan and all those teams. No, Indiana, definitely, it's a total change from what it's been. And I think it's such a fascinating case study of this new college football world that we live in with the schedule that they've played. And they've kind of been this unique team over the last couple of years. And maybe a little bit more respect this year because of what they've done so far, although I know that there has been a lot of skepticism on this program about Illinois. But I think that Iowa win, it's tough to play at Iowa. Like, that's not an easy place to go and play. So I don't necessarily know if I think that Indiana is really the number 7 team in the nation. But I do think they're a top 15 team. I think they're a really good team. I think there's a chance that maybe they're a top 10 team. I am excited to learn about them a little bit more as they come to Autzen Stadium. But just hearing about how long it had been since they'd beaten Ohio State, I mean, think about it for Oregon. If they do lose this game, like, I honestly think that I'm not saying you're going to lose any respect from the rest of the Big Ten teams, but that's one of those things that, like, just thinking about from the Ohio State perspective of you play Indiana, you know you're going to win. You know what I mean? It's so crazy to think about. So for Oregon, it's an important win just because of that, I think. To just kind of maintain the standard that I think that they've been setting for themselves and all these other Big Ten teams have sort of recognized.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you tuned in the middle of that interview and you said, who are Steve and Justin talking to? Within 2 seconds, you knew that was a radio announcer for somebody. That dude had a radio voice.
Absolutely.
Don Fischer has been working it for 52 years, but as I was listening to that guy, I was like, man, there is no career this guy should have done other than and I don't know if maybe he's an accountant on the side or what, but that dude's got a voice built for radio, and I'm glad he found his home because he was definitely that guy there. I'm with you on the Indiana, they still have to prove it. I said this all. I was on the team last year of, hey, I don't even think they should make the playoff at 11-1 because the only good team they played, they didn't get there. And then this year they played nobody in non-conference. They blew out Illinois. I was the same way, kind of. I'm not sure that Illinois team. The one thing I will say is that I believe that Curt Cignetti is not a coach who's going to come in here and get blown out. And I will say that, and that'll be my Illinois thing. When I looked at Illinois against against Indiana, I thought back to last year when Illinois came here, and it was like, boy, this Illinois team looks really good. And Bielema just got his doors blown off with them, and I thought, seems like a guy who gets a little maybe into himself and into his team. Cignetti seems like a guy to me who takes everything personal in a little bit of a Lanning way. I don't think that Curt Cignetti's coming in here thinking, hey, we're going to, get, hoping to do well. I think he thinks he's going to win. And if they don't win, they're going to play hard, and I think they're going to play well. I do have a wonder about Mendoza in the idea that we just haven't seen him, and he came through in some nice moments for Cal, kind of meaning, I don't know, not meaningless games, but not as big of games.
Sure.
This is his first game against a top 10 team with a top 10 team to where, and he's now in that Dante Moore in him. I've seen some lists to where they are the 1-2. And there's a lot on Mendoza going on the road. Maybe Mendoza's great, and he surprises me. This feels like one of those moments where we come in here Monday, and it's like, Mendoza wasn't quite up for that moment. We saw the
Drew Aller
20, or we saw, but even going on the road and just, we saw kind of a 20 for 38 for 202 yards with 2 picks. Wasn't quite there going on the road. And again, Mendoza's a little older. Maybe I'm sorry. I don't think that, I look at Cignetti and think he's ready for this moment. I'm not sure that Francisco Mendoza is.
Yeah, Cignetti kind of seems like one of those mad scientist types where he's just like, just hearing about how much he looks at film, that sounds like exactly the kind of guy I expected, to be honest with you. And I do agree. I think that I'll never forget either the first game for Mendoza when it's Oregon State and Cal. And we've been hearing we actually got Justin Wilcox that week, and we talked to him about these other quarterbacks, and I don't even remember who the other guys were, but we talked all the week about these two other guys, and then Fernando Mendoza comes out there, and he just like lit it up for Cal, and it was kind of immediately like this, like, okay, like who is this guy kind of moment. And since then, I've been surprised that he's sort of risen up as much as he has. It felt like he was going to be like a decent college quarterback that never really had a future beyond that, but he's totally surpassed that. Now he's kind of in these conversations of, hey, maybe he's the number one pick, or maybe he's a top 5 guy, or I don't know, like if that's necessarily going to be the case. But I do think that it's a team that if you're the Ducks, like you have to take seriously, obviously. Yeah. And it seems to me that based on what we've been hearing early in these press conferences from Curt Cignetti, there hasn't been a lot of bear poking.
Yeah, good move on his part.
Yep, good move on his part, because it seems like he kind of takes things personally like Lanning does as well, and that's sort of an interesting matchup coaching-wise.
Yeah, I did see a Mendoza quote, though, where he said Autzen wasn't very distracting last time I was there, so I don't expect it this time, which probably wasn't a very good one to do. But Mendoza is kind of like this, Cignetti was again, he's like 63 before he gets to, the
big
Power
time.
5 level.
Yeah.
Power 4 level now. And he was James Madison, and he was a bunch of other things below. And it feels like he has sort of that chip that has worked.
Sure.
Mendoza's one whose dad played at Miami and thought he was like a Miami type and didn't get that recruited, and then went to Cal and was good, but again had the kind of this feeling like I'm better than this and that. And then so I do see those two guys as having kind of a symmetry on that. I just feel like, again, I could just feel walking out of Saturday, if I'm envisioning what happens, maybe it's like the Mendoza thing was a little overhyped. But I think Indiana sticks with it. I mean, I don't think this is a Illinois game last year, which my recollection was kind of over by halftime. They had no ability to move anything, and Oregon kind of dominated them. I think this is a 24-10 halftime thing where maybe Indiana's getting the ball coming out the second half, and we're thinking it's still a game. I just feel like eventually Oregon, I think talent-wise, Oregon, especially at home, pulls away from this thing against a team that, again, hasn't gone on the road and done this before. I don't think this is the place where those Indiana guys get their first big win.
I would agree. And I think that for them, they're probably looking at this opportunity like, hey, this is our opportunity to play a top 10 game that isn't an Ohio State. It isn't a Penn State. Like, maybe they see that way. But I think that as well, my thing about Indiana is that I think Indiana is a pretty good team. I just think Oregon's maybe the best team. I mean, they're certainly among the best. So I don't think that this is going to be a super close game by the end of it. But I also think that's just because of how good Oregon is, not because Indiana is a fraud or something like that. Like, I think Indiana's better than last year. They're certainly a team that's on that next level down, below the Ohio State and the not Penn State anymore, but the Oregons of the Big Ten. I think they're a level below that, but I still think they're a team I would take them over Illinois, obviously, and those sort of other middle of the tier Big Ten teams. So they're just kind of in this weird own category. I feel like. Yep,
and I love the fact you had mentioned the I think Don Fischer called Cignetti kind of quirky, and you said kind of one of these guys who kind of do their thing, and it's like that. I remember in high school, and when I was covering high school for a long time, he had coaches, Jack Wigmore at Churchill and some others who ran like this double wing, and they were the quirkiest, but they totally bought into what they did, and their players bought into it, and they would run up scores, man. I mean, Wigmore would beat people 68-3 running this quirky little double wing with two fast running backs type thing. You get some of these guys who literally kind of just sit in their cave and just study film and are so tuned into that. And I feel like, again, with Cignetti, he's one of those guys who it's kind of getting late. It's getting early late for him, because he didn't get a Power 5 in his 50s. It was in the 60s. And I see him as being like, man, I want to do this and kind of befuddle some of these young punks who are getting these jobs earlier. And so I could see some of that there. Yeah. I've just had some experience with some of those dudes in high school, and they're fascinating. And he feels like that kind of a guy who, again, isn't afraid to. And if he speaks, but again, like you're saying, he wasn't chirping a lot this week. No. But if he wins this game, I promise you, he's going to stand up there afterwards and be like, pumping his chest a little bit, because he's want to do that after winning some of those games.
Yeah, I don't think we can take anything for granted after what we saw last weekend. But I think that this is a good team that's going to get their punches in. Like, I don't think this is going to be one of those games where Oregon completely shuts them out, and it's like, oh man, Indiana was nothing. I think that Indiana's good. I think that Oregon's better.
Yeah. And I was there for 2004, and Indiana was not good, and Oregon was better. I was there. My recollection, and I at the time was not covering Oregon, but I was doing sidebars for home games. And I'll never forget, it was the opening weekend of the season. I was trying to find what the date. It was like August 30th, and it wasn't a great Oregon team, but it was sort of like, hey, we're Oregon. Maybe we're going to be 8-4 this year type thing, and we're certainly more talented than, as he mentioned, this Jerry DiNardo team that's won 8 games in the previous 3 years, and the coach is about to get fired this year. And that game started off, and the fans, again, everybody's optimistic opening day, and the way that thing started off, 17-0 Indiana after the first quarter, and Oregon's just turning. It's Kellen Clemens' game, and Oregon's just turning the ball over, turning it over. It's 23-0 at halftime, and then it gets to 30-0. So it's 30-0 Indiana. Oregon comes back and cuts it down to 17-7. For some of those folks who love their Duck history and remember some of those names, there was Jared Siegel with a field goal. Dante Rosario had 2 touchdown catches. And then just as Oregon gets back into it, all of a sudden Indiana runs back a kickoff return. So you have 7 turnovers and allow a kickoff return. And that's how big the difference was in the talent between these two teams. Oregon turned the ball over 7 times, gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown, still only lost by 6 on that one. So I'll never forget them. I know Duck fans out there will remember that was 21 years ago. But it will certainly give some of them for pause because I remember going into that and feeling like this was going to be a great chance for them. And it didn't happen, but that's. I was glad that Don mentioned that. Obviously, he would. He was halfway through his career at that point, but that was a cool one. But it'll be a fun game on. I think it's going to be a fun one, and I love the fact it's 12:30. I love the fact that the nation's gonna be able to watch it. They're going up against the Oklahoma-Texas game at the same time, but a lot of people are going to watch this one. If it's one of those to where, since Indiana hasn't really, Ohio State ended up beating them last year, but there was a block kick and some things went into it. They lose the game at Penn State in the playoff, but again, it was by a 14-point thing. If Oregon does end up pulling this thing and wins it by 20 or something, it really puts a feather in it, I think, for what they've done, because we have not seen this Cignetti team just kind of get run off the field by anybody.
No, and I think that it's really good timing, actually, this game, because of the fact that it's a top matchup, and Oregon's resume has been fractured a little bit by this Penn State loss, and to UCLA, obviously. And I'm still in the camp of, I still think that's a great win. I think now, because of that, Oregon's Big Ten title hopes and being in that Big Ten championship game, you're basically all systems go. Obviously, you have to win the rest of your games, but I think that's why that's still a big game. But certainly, it'll help their reputation if they can take care of Indiana, look really good doing it. They'll get another top 10 win, if you want to call it that, on their resume. I'm still is it a ranked win if they're still ranked, or is it a ranked win because they're ranked at the time? That's a debate amongst yourselves. I think that it matters where they are now. So I think that Penn State will probably end up raising up in the ranks again. I don't think they're going to be an unranked team by the end of the year. So I think that this is really good timing, especially coming off the bye, getting a little opportunity to rest his players for Dan Lanning. So I think it's good timing for this game.
I'm going to jump into that debate because I understand what you say, that the Oregon has been fractured by that. My thing is, I still go back and look at what games were at the time they occurred. And
no, I'm the same way. Yeah.
No, I totally understand. But what I'm saying is that facing an undefeated ranked 2 or 3 Penn State team, excuse me, on the road, to me, is still a big win in a whiteout.
Oh, 100%.
I don't care what happens with Penn State afterwards. I feel the same way with LSU beating Clemson. It was an opening game. I think that was a big game for them, knowing that they were going to Clemson. They were facing at Clemson. That, regardless of what Clemson does at the end, Clemson at that time we thought was good, and they were playing well. I give Miami credit for beating Florida, because I think at the time we thought Florida was still pretty good, and now maybe Florida is good. But I look back on games at sort of what they were at the time, and I don't think we can look and say, well, Penn State lost to UCLA, they're unranked, that's now an unranked win. That was still a win over a team in their whiteout game. I just think that it's like suddenly we get here, Ohio State beating Texas. Oh, well, Texas is unranked. That's an unranked game now. I don't buy that. That was the huge hyped opening game. It was at Ohio State.
The circumstances of the time actually matter,
exactly.
turns
and
out.
I think that matters because you were facing a team. Now, once a team like Texas loses that first one, maybe they take a step back and are like, hey, we're not as good, and they lose some confidence. But they had them at a full confidence level. Same thing with Oregon getting Penn State. Same thing with that LSU win over Clemson. I just don't look back. Again, if that team that you face is like Florida State last year, and they end up going 2-10, I'm okay. That was a trashy win. That wasn't anything. But if you beat a Clemson on the opening week, and that Clemson team goes 9-3 and isn't in the top 25, I still give them credit for that. A, for scheduling it. It was a non-conference game. They made the point scheduling a game they thought was going to be tough. and they ended up winning it under circumstances that 12 weeks later were different. I don't think we can just look at the end of the season and say what every team is now is what they were all season long. I think that Penn State in week 3 was really good. I think Oregon beat them, and then they looked and said, wow, that was a lot of hype for that game. Now we're going to go play some crummy team and have to go across the country and do it, and they didn't have the same, mental ready for it. But to me, judging teams, you have to go back to what the team was at the time you played them, as opposed to just looking at the end and saying, hey, well, they only won this many rings. To me, Oregon beat a top 10 team when they beat Penn State. And if Penn State goes 8-4 this year, I'll still say Oregon beat a top 10 team because at the time they were, and it was a tough road atmosphere for them to do. So I don't like the revisionists that at the end we sit here and just say, whatever your final record is, you were that same team all year long. Teams vary, and some wins that you get earlier were better than they look, and maybe some are worse. Again, if a team beat Florida State in week 1 last year, and like, wow, that was crazy. They just beat Florida State team undefeated last year. Well, and that team goes 2-10, then it wasn't as good. But if that team goes 8-4, I'm still with it.
No, I think we're mostly in agreement here. I think that maybe I pick and choose a little bit, like that Clemson game to me. I just really don't think Clemson's good. I think Penn State's good. When I was watching them against Oregon, I was thinking, hey, this is another top 5 team. Like, I didn't sit there and go, wow, I bet you Penn State collapses after this and loses to UCLA. So, no, I'm completely in agreement because the circumstances matter. The circumstances of, hey, Oregon played in the game. It was 2-4. Was that what it was? Yeah. It was a top 5 game in a. I mean, you see Dante Moore's emotions after that game. There's so much preparation that goes into that game. I mean, Penn State probably put more preparation into that game than any of those first 4 games combined, basically. They had all offseason to prepare for that game. So they were ready for Oregon. And it's not just, oh, well, okay, now they're not a top 25 team. It doesn't mean anything. So I think we're almost completely in agreement there, for sure.
All right. We are going to head and do a break. When we come back, we will hear a little bit from Dan Lanning talking about Indiana. And we might talk baseball, although Justin might not want to. We
can talk American League.
So. You are listening to the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports, KORE, 1050 AM, 102.9 FM, Fox Sports Eugene, and KNCU, 92.7, Fox Sports Newport. Welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show. This is Steve Bibbs filling in for Danny on a exciting Tuesday afternoon. It's been fun to chat some Oregon, Indiana. The second straight game, not second straight week because there was a bye, but the second straight game we've been able to talk about a top 10 matchup. Although, as we just discussed, now some people will say that game we talked about 2 weeks ago was not a top 10 matchup suddenly. But I'm going to say it still was, and the same with Indiana on there. Dan Lanning met with the media last night and went over a little bit of it, and I thought he had some interesting things to talk about. One of them was he talked about just kind of what he's seen from Indiana.
Yeah, I think the first thing that sticks out is like this is a team that has a clear identity. You know, they know what they're good at, and they do it really, really, really well. They run the ball well, and you know, they obviously have RPO tags off a lot of their runs that they make sure what they're running it into an advantageous look. When they're throwing it into a look. They do a really good job of that. You know, so that's the thing that stands out. They're rushing as well as anybody in the country, and then throwing as well as anybody in the country, and they have a lot of weapons that they can use.
So that's Dan Lanning talking about Indiana. We chatted with Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, about Fernando Mendoza. Sorry, got that one back. Mendoza faced the Ducks 2 years ago when he was at California. Lanning had some recollections on how that game went.
I think he's surrounded by some really talented players, and I think again has a really clear understanding of a scheme. This offense, when you watch it, it has an identity. You're going to see the same play ran a couple times. The window dressing might be different, but they know how to run this play. It's not about inventing new offense. It's about running it better than you and executing it better than you, and they do a really good job of that. And then they do enough of that to where you think, okay, this is what it's going to be, and then they throw a wrinkle in there, and it is different. So he's playing in an offense that clearly has an identity, and he's playing around really good players.
I think that's kind of interesting that he isn't sitting there and saying, oh, well, he's more accurate or like all this stuff. He's saying he's playing in a better offense with better players, basically.
Yeah, which can help. I mean, we've seen that before. Yeah. I mean, I would say Dante Moore is in a better offense with better players than he was 2 years ago. Yeah. So that can make the difference, absolutely. And like we say, Mendoza being mentioned, it's kind of him and Moore right now, or kind of whether it be the Heisman or the 1-2 pick.
Right.
It's
been a weird year for those top quarterbacks.
Yeah.
They've all been disappointing.
Yeah. No, I mean, and yeah, we've seen, Arch Manning's been disappointing. Cade Klubnik's lost a few games.
Lenore Sellers, DJ
Sellers
Lagway.
Been injured. Lagway, although Lagway came back last week. So it's kind of the guys who are down here and have kind of risen up.
Right.
And that's where, and let's face it, and not so much for the number 1 versus number 2 pick, because pro scouts will look at different things, but for the Heisman, whoever wins this game in a head-to-head situation, top 10 against another top quarterback, will certainly vault to the top of what the Heisman's picks are going to look like heading in.
Yeah.
But those can change.
Right. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, I didn't come into this game thinking, okay, top 2 quarterback matchup, but it kind of is. Yeah. I mean, you're totally right. This is a statement game for this Indiana team, and it's kind of for everybody involved, right? I mean, I'm sure that Fernando, he's looking at his draft stock and
absolutely
wants to perform well. But Dante Moore, I mean, I think that the benefit that the Ducks have is that I'm not saying less pressure's on him, but it's kind of about the team still, I think. Then that stuff's going to come with it.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what it's been like for Dylan Gabriel. It's what it's been like for Bo. Like their Heisman case is kind of tied to how well Oregon plays in a lot of ways.
Marcus Mariota won Heisman because he was on a team that was really good for Oregon. And as Don Fischer mentioned, hey, Mendoza come back next year. We know with Dante at Oregon, we'll see again if either of them are top 5 guys. They're probably not, but that possibility is out there. Oregon coming off the bye week, and one more cut from Lanning, who talked about kind of the difference coming off the Penn State game to Indiana, how he's handled this bye week differently.
Yeah, just a little bit more focused on recovery, on some of the work that we had to do. I think you check boxes as a coach, like, okay, do we have a physical team? What do you need to ramp up in a bye week? What do you need to dial back? And I feel like we have a physical team. It was important for us to be able to recover and train ourselves with more mental reps, more than physical practice reps at times.
Yeah, interesting to again. We've talked about Lanning is just kind of on the top of things. Never going to be like, hey, what did we do last year at this time? What did we do on the previous bye week?
Yeah.
It's, hey, how's this one different from how do we adjust to what this one is? And not a surprise at all on that one there. I know you and Danny got a lot into Oregon State yesterday. It's a depressing topic right now. I don't want to get too much into it. But there was news today as Deegan Rose, their top quarterback recruit for next year, decommitted. I can't say it's a big surprise. If you're a guy like him, he's a California quarterback. I think he's a 3 to 4 star and has been kind of rising. And I think people felt no matter what happened with Oregon State this year, it was going to be a battle for them to hang on to him because he had been somebody who had kind of committed to them early but had stayed loyal. But certainly now with I think the coaching uncertainty, even if Trent Bray comes back, is it a different offensive coordinator? And with just sort of the whole NIL, I mean, just sort of all the negativity around the program right now, I think if you're a kid like Deegan Rose and other schools are coming in and saying, hey, what are you doing with that mess up there? It's not a huge surprise, but it's just another big hit for Trent Bray right now. It feels like the hits keep coming, and quite honestly, Trent's not doing a whole lot to deflect it by succeeding at things, and he's kind of getting some things coming at him. And the loss of their top quarterback recruit is just kind of the next in the line.
Right, and that's where it's so tough, right? Because at the very least, you want to be able to look forward into the future and say, well, at least we have this coming up for us. And you want to know where the On3 recruiting rankings are for this Oregon State team for 2026?
Is it double digits or triple?
Oh, it's triple digits.
Oh, that's not good.
It's 102nd.
Yeah, that's not good. If you're in the hundreds when there's about 132 or 3 programs.
Right.
So.
Well, and the thing is about 2026 is that from everything I've understood, it's a lot further on in the cycle than it typically has been at this point in previous years. So a lot of those top recruits, I mean, it's not going to be necessarily like that for like every recruit, but a lot of the top recruits are already signed, and it's about flipping them at this point. Yeah. So I think that's just going to kind of trickle down to where the Beavers are recruiting now. I mean, they're not fishing in the big ponds at this point. Like they're trying to get like those diamonds in the rough and guys that they can develop, and that's totally different than what we've seen this for this Beaver team when they were in the Pac-12, and that's what's really sucks, honestly. It really sucks.
And that's kind of what Rose was. It was a guy they got in on early, and then others came through, and now he goes. And quite honestly, that thing, I mean, I still think there's a huge question on Trent Bray, and, if he figures this things out and they win 5 of the final 6, and look, 2 games against Washington State, Wake Forest, Lafayette, there's a scenario out there, Sam Houston, which is 0-6. There's a scenario where he could win 5 of these, and suddenly I don't think you're getting rid of him. If you're winning 2 of them, you are, and then your whole recruiting class then even. So I think even to look at Oregon State's recruiting class right now is probably, a fool's errand because you just have no idea what this thing's going to look like and who the coach is going to be and whether it's going to be the guy who's there. So, but I just wanted to get to that to make sure that folks had heard that Deegan Rose is no longer an OSU recruit. Baseball. Mariners. We were supposed to be watching Mariners right now. We're watching the Mariners, but it is the replay from 2 nights ago. There was a rain delay in Detroit. For those who were working in our Mariner fans are probably pretty excited right now because it was like, hey, 108 start. I'm not going to be able to see it. Now it looks like we might be at least to 3:30 or 4 before this thing gets started. And under a scenario there, then you can be home in time to watch it. But I'm excited for this tonight. It's Mariners versus Tigers. It's the only divisional round series that's 1-1 because the Dodgers, the Brewers, and the Toronto Blue Jays are all up 2-0. This is the only one that's guaranteed to go to a Game 4. I think it'll be a big one tonight. They have Logan Gilbert going against Jack Flaherty. Flaherty hasn't been great since signing with the Tigers. It's a chance for, if the Mariners could get tonight, then the worst-case scenario is at least you're getting a Game 5 at home. Lose tonight, you run the risk of not getting back to T-Mobile on that one there. NL, we saw last night, Dodgers held on 1-4-3, and Cubs lost to the Brewers.
Did you see that the TBS broadcast, or sorry, TNT, I don't remember what it was. I watched it on Max. But the broadcast came in as Suzuki was rounding the bases. So if you were a Cubs fan, you saw nothing from the game that you enjoyed because that was basically their entire offense that game. And yeah, the Brewers are just the better team. I just want to go back to the Mariners real quick though, because I think that they had a big pivot moment in that series at Game 2 because they were facing Skubal. And they'd already lost that first game. So I was really impressed with them winning that game. And you could see how much it meant from the fans. I mean, they were like fans crying in the stands being up in Game 2 of a divisional game. So
imagine what Game 5 would be. If they come back and there's a Game 5.
If there's anybody that knows what this is like, it's a Cubs fan who experienced the 108 years.
And cried a little bit
himself.
himself.
Absolutely. And just experienced the it's like nauseating, the stress of going through these playoff runs. So great series there. I think the Dodgers, man, I mean, they just look like the more talented team. I think the Brewers and the Dodgers are kind of the apropos teams to play in the series because the Brewers have been kind of the best team and the Dodgers are the most talented team. So I think that's going to be a fun series if that happens.
Well, I'm angry at you that you're going to root for the Dodgers to beat the Brewers.
To.
I thought we were. I mean, come on, this is the plucky little Brewers.
And I know, a Packers fan.
You stole their coach and thought that he would lead you, and it turns out he would have been better off staying in Milwaukee. And his first lieutenant, the former Emeralds manager, Pat Murphy, takes it over. I am all in on the Brewers. I thought for sure. I know you don't like the big money teams.
I'm a Midwest guy. I know.
How can you not be?
Well, I'm ultimately probably not going to root for the Dodgers, but in that series, it's just it's tough for me, man. The Brewers are that team for the Cubs now. That the Cardinals and the Cubs have never been competitive together, and the White Sox are on the other side. So it's really become the Brewers have been that team that there's a lot of animosity between those two teams. You mentioned Council coming over, and they're just a great organization. What can I say? I'm very jealous. I wish that we ran more like them, but I just don't know. I don't know if I can do that.
I could see Brewers fans hating the Cubs if it was the opposite situation because they took their coach or their manager and said, "Hey, come here. We're the better organization."
Well, so you think we're kind of front running, basically?
I think you should. I think you should say, "Hey, those Brewers are the lovable underdogs as compared to the Dodgers."
We can relate to them a little bit.
Yeah, the Brewers have never won a World Series, right? They're one of the few that have never won one. The Dodgers.
Yeah, but then imagine that as a Cubs fan, if they win a World Series, they're going to hold that in their face for the rest of the year.
Yeah, but then you would say, "Hey, well, maybe we shouldn't have taken. If we hadn't taken your manager, maybe we wouldn't have." So I think it's the Cubs' fault.
We're not the victims here. No.
They got the money there too as well.
Exactly.
I'm all on Pat Murphy, as I've said before. Great, enjoyed working with him for 2 years.
Seem to know what they're doing.
They do. They had never. This was the most stunning stat, and they've had some decent playoff runs. Until last night, they had never had a 3-run homer or a grand slam into a playoff game in the franchise history.
It's crazy.
And they get 2 3-run homers last night.
22nd in the league in home runs.
From Vaughn and Churio, both hit 3 homers. And they never. Again, Harvey's wall bangers. I mean, that's before you, but in the 80s, I mean, they've had some recent playoff runs to never have a 3-run homer or a grand slam. Yeah, and to have it go that way was crazy. So I'm still. I think I said last week I was rooting for Brewers Mariners. I'm still on the Brewers Mariners bandwagon and hoping for that one.
Well, I'm still rooting for the Cubs, but
I'm sure you are.
Not
and
hopeful.
Hey, go home. You can win 2 at home.
Yeah.
I don't know who they got pitching. It's
Tyone.
Tyone, okay. Because even the Brewers last night, their starter, who was kind of a bullpen guy, gave up 3 in the first inning, and then the bullpen threw 7 scoreless. So they just seem to be getting it done. But all right, 2 at home coming for the Cubs. So it would be interesting to maybe get this thing back to a Game 5 for that one. But then again, for you who are listening now and wanting a Mariners score, there is no score yet. The game has been delayed and is currently in a rain delay. All right, Justin. Well, I appreciate you having me in. It's been fun. Thanks for booking Don Fischer. That was great. He was a really good guest.
Yeah, that was fun as well.
His voice is going to ring in my ears all night long. So this is Steve Mims. I'm filling in for Danny. You're listening to the Danny and Justin Show on 1050 AM, 102.9 FM, KORE Eugene, and KNCU 92.